The wind howled across the empty plains like a wounded animal, carrying with it the kind of cold that cut through leather and bone alike. Snow drifted in restless waves, blurring the line between earth and sky. Nathaniel Callahan's cabin sat alone at the edge of the woods, the lantern glow in its window, a solitary star in the darkness. Inside, Nate hunched over the fire, a mug of bitter coffee cradled in his callous hands. The logs crackled, the only sound beside the distant moan of the storm. He'd built this place with his own 2 hands, stacking logs one atop another until he'd walled himself away from the world. 5 years ago, the war had spat him out broken and hollow. Since then, he had chosen solitude like a man choosing his coffin. The townsfolk called him rich, but the only wealth he had was a lifetime supply of silence and regret. The first knock was so faint he thought it was the wind. The second made him stiffen. Nate set his mug down slowly, his fingers brushing the revolver at his belt. Nobody came this far out unless they had a reason, and reasons out here were rarely good. The third knock was frantic, weak. He unbarred the door and swung it open. She was standing there in the snow, trembling so violently he thought she might shatter like glass. Her dress was thin and torn, the white fabric dirt-stained and clinging to her narrow frame. Long black hair hung in wet, tangled ropes, crusted with ice. Her lips, cracked and blue, moved soundlessly for a moment before a whisper finally emerged. "I'm freezing. Please let me in. I'll repay you, I swear it." Her voice was hoarse, broken by cold and desperation. Nate's grip tightened on the doorframe. She was Apache. In town, they'd speak her name like a curse. Men like McCready and Holt would call her trouble on 2 legs, a savage girl unfit for mercy. But her eyes, dark and bottomless, held no malice, only pleading. "Who sent you?" he asked, his tone hard. Her knees buckled, and she nearly collapsed into the snow. "Please," she whispered again, her voice catching on the syllable. Nate hesitated. Then something shifted in him, sharp as a blade twisting in old scar tissue. He saw his sister's face, pale and still in her coffin years ago, dead because no one had opened their door in a storm. He stepped aside. "Get in." She stumbled forward, and he caught her before she fell. Her skin was ice cold, her wrists raw with red rope burns. Whoever left her out there hadn't just abandoned her. They'd wanted her to suffer. Inside, he lowered her onto a chair by the fire and threw 2 extra logs on the flames. The cabin was warm, but she curled in on herself, shivering so hard her teeth chattered. "Name?" he asked. Her lips moved. "Maricela." "Maricela what?" She shook her head faintly, eyes darting away. "You deaf?" he asked carefully. She flinched, then shook her head again. "Mute." A faint whisper. "No." "Can you drink?" "Yes." He poured hot coffee into a tin cup and set it in her hands. Her fingers, stiff and reddened from frost, barely managed to hold it steady. "You can stay tonight," Nate said, his voice rough. "But come morning, we'll figure what to do with you." Her gaze flicked up at him, searching his face for something he wasn't sure he could give. "Thank you," she whispered. The storm raged through the night, rattling the cabin walls like an angry fist. Nate couldn't sleep. He sat at the table, staring at the orange glow of the fire, while Maricela huddled beneath a blanket. She drifted into a shallow, restless sleep, her lips moving faintly in dreams. He couldn't make out the words. At dawn, she was awake, standing near the window with the blanket still wrapped tight around her. Snow coated the ground outside, shining cold and merciless in the pale light. "You're not safe out there," Nate said gruffly. She didn't turn to him. "I'm not safe anywhere." He frowned. "Who tied you up?" Her fingers gripped the blanket tighter. "A man." "Settler?" "Yes." "Why?" Her voice was a soft rasp. "I was given to him. A peace offering. He didn't want me. Said I wasn't worth keeping." Nate's jaw clenched. He'd heard of men like that. The ones who took Apache women under the guise of peace and treated them like stock animals until they grew tired. "You'll stay here," he said at last. Maricela turned slowly, her eyes wet but steady. "Why?" He didn't answer right away. Because he'd been left behind once too. because the world had taken and taken from him until he'd forgotten what it felt like to give. Because no one deserves to be thrown away, he said. They settled into a fragile rhythm over the next few days. Maricela mended torn shirts by the fire, her delicate fingers threading the needle with practiced ease. Nate chopped wood outside, but he found his eyes strained to the window, watching her silhouette move about the cabin. She spoke little, but she wasn't mute. When she did speak, her words were soft, careful, as though testing whether they were safe here. At night, she hummed low melodies he didn't recognize, haunting tunes that seemed to carry the weight of generations. Each time she brushed past him, a faint scent of smoke and pine clung to her skin. He hadn't felt the presence of another soul in years, and it unsettled him how quickly he began to crave it. One evening, 3 men rode up the path, lanterns swinging in the dusk. Maricela saw them first. Her face went pale, and her fingers clutched Nate's arm. "Don't let them take me," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Stay inside," he said, his voice low but steady. The men dismounted, boots crunching on frost. The leader, a broad-shouldered rancher with a scarred face, spat into the snow. "Callahan," he bellowed, "we know you've got her. Hand her over." "She's not yours to take," Nate replied from the porch, his rifle resting casually against his shoulder. "She's mine by law," the rancher snarled. "Now give her up, or we'll take her by force." "You think law makes a man?" Nate's voice was quiet, but it cut through the cold like a blade. "You've no claim here. Stand aside, Callahan. You don't want the town against you." "I've lived without the town for years," Nate said flatly. "One more won't kill me." The man's hand twitched toward his pistol. Nate didn't flinch. "Try it," he said, his voice calm. "I'll bury you here and feed you the wolves." For a moment, only the wind spoke. Then the rancher spat again and jerked his chin toward his men. "Let's ride." They mounted and disappeared into the dark. Nate lowered his rifle and turned. Maricela was standing in the doorway, her dark eyes brimming with tears. "You risked everything," she said. "I don't have much to risk." She stepped forward, her fingers brushing his sleeve. "Yes," she whispered. "You do." For the first time in years, Nate felt the tight knot in his chest begin to loosen. Spring came slow and quiet, the snow melting into rivers that fed the earth. Maricela planted flowers by the cabin, her hands dirty with soil. Nate watched her from the porch, whittling a piece of wood into a small carving, a bird delicate and strong. He handed it to her one evening. "For you," he said. Her fingers lingered on his, her touch soft as new leaves. Sometimes the world throws 2 lost souls together, not to save each other, but to teach them how to live again. And in the quiet of a cabin on the edge of nowhere, they found what neither had thought they deserved, a home. If you ever feel discarded, remember, one open door can change the shape of your whole life.